2 years prior, the millionaire had thrown her out of their home after an irrational argument, convinced of a betrayal that never existed. There were no gentle goodbyes, no chance for explanations. If you enjoy stories like this, be sure to subscribe to this channel. We post every day. Continuing, Heathrow Airport was bustling even in the early hours of the morning. Raphael adjusted the watch on his wrist and sighed deeply. Another business trip, another attempt to escape the ghosts that insisted on haunting his empty days in London. The consulting firm he had inherited from his father was thriving. Numbers were breaking monthly records, but the feeling of emptiness only grew. At 35, he had everything he had dreamed of having at 20, except the one thing that truly mattered. He stopped in front of the 24-hour supermarket on Oxford Street. He needed aspirin for the hangover that would surely come during the flight to New York, and a bottle of wine to try and lull the guilt that had gnawed at him for 2 years. 2 years since he had destroyed the only good thing he had in his life out of pure pride and irrational jealousy. The fluorescent lights of the market assaulted his tired eyes. He picked up a bottle of Argentinian Malbec and a bottle of painkillers, walking mechanically between the almost empty shelves. A few employees restocked products. 1 or 2 people bought something last minute. The nocturnal routine of the city that never sleeps. At the checkout, he placed the items on the conveyor belt and took out his phone to check the flight time. 3 hours still. Enough time to go home, take a shower, and head to the airport. The employee began to scan the products, and he looked up distractedly. The world stopped. Marianne was there, in a navy blue supermarket uniform, with a very evident 6-month round belly under the stretched fabric. Her brown hair tied back in a simple bun, deep dark circles marking the face he had once kissed every morning. She recognized him immediately but showed no reaction beyond a slight stiffening of her shoulders. "Credit or debit, sir?" Her voice cut through the air like a sharp blade, the formal, cold address, calculated to hurt him. And it did. Raphael was paralyzed, his mouth dry, his heart pounding as if he had run a marathon. She was pregnant. Marianne, his Marianne, was expecting a child with another man. The same woman he had thrown out of their home one December night, convinced of a betrayal that never existed, blind with jealousy and wounded pride. He choked on his own words. "Credit." She swiped the card with mechanical, professional movements. Her hands trembled slightly, he noticed. Tiredness. Marianne had always had steady, sure hands. She was a history teacher. She used to gesticulate a lot when explaining the age of discovery to uninterested teenagers. Now, at 28, she was here, in the middle of the night, working in a supermarket, pregnant and visibly exhausted. "You can enter your PIN." Her voice remained controlled, but Raphael knew every nuance of that tone. He knew the Marianne who laughed loudly watching bad movies, who cried at margarine commercials, who made pancakes on Sundays singing off-key. He knew the woman he had called home and whom he had destroyed in a single night of blind fury. He entered the PIN with trembling fingers. The transaction was approved. She handed him the bag and the card without looking directly at him. "Have a good trip, sir." How did she know he was traveling? Perhaps it was just a formality, an automatic wish of good luck, or perhaps she still knew him too well, still knew how to read the signs. The well-pressed clothes in the middle of the night, the controlled haste, the nervousness of someone with an important commitment. Raphael took the bag and stood there for a few seconds that felt like an eternity. He wanted to say something, anything, to apologize, to ask how she was, to say that he thought of her every day since he had thrown her out of the house. But the words wouldn't come, and she was already attending to the next customer, a middle-aged man buying milk and bread. He left the supermarket like a sleepwalker and got into his car. His hands trembled so much that it took him 3 attempts to start the ignition. He drove through the empty streets of London, but instead of going home, he drove aimlessly. The image of Marianne pregnant, tired, working in the early hours, wouldn't leave his mind. 2 hours later, he parked in front of his own building and picked up his phone. He cancelled the flight to New York. He cancelled the meeting with the American investors. He cancelled the escape he had planned for weeks. He went up to his duplex apartment in Notting Hill and poured himself the wine he had bought, drinking directly from the bottle as he walked through the spacious, empty living room. Everything there reminded him of Marianne. The bookshelf she had organized chronologically, against all his aesthetic principles, the sofa where she liked to curl up to read on Sundays, the balcony where she had planted herbs in an improvised garden of colorful pots. After she left, he had hired an interior designer to redo everything. But he could never completely erase her traces. The argument that had changed their lives happened on a night like this, December, Christmas Eve. He had arrived late from a company party and found her on her phone, smiling at the screen. Irrational jealousy, unfounded suspicion, wounded pride because she had refused to go to the party with him, an escalation of baseless accusations, shouting, words that could not be unsaid. "Do you think I'm an idiot, Marianne? Do you think I don't see how you're exchanging messages with that teacher from school? Raphael, you're crazy. It's the teachers' group organizing the students' end-of-year party." "Lies. I saw you talking at the school gate. I saw how he looks at you." "You followed me. Are you following me, Raphael?" From there, everything crumbled. He accused her of betrayal. She vehemently denied it. He demanded she choose between her job at the school and their relationship. She refused. Pride against pride, wounded love against trampled dignity. In the end, he said the words that made her pack her bags that same night. "If you can't give up a job for me, then you don't really love me. You can leave. Go live your perfect life with your little teacher friends." She left without looking back. He was too rich, too powerful, too accustomed to having everything under control to run after her. He waited for her to come back apologizing. He waited a week, a month, 3 months. Pride wouldn't let him look for her, and when he finally tried, he discovered she had moved out of London. Now, 2 years later, there she was, pregnant, working in the early hours, far from the profession she loved. And he, alone in a £3 million apartment, drinking wine and reliving his own stupidity. The next morning, Raphael woke up on the sofa with a terrible hangover and an absolute certainty he needed to see her again. He took a cold shower, drank 3 cups of coffee, and drove to the supermarket. It was Saturday noon. She wouldn't be there, obviously. Normal people don't work in the early hours every day, but she was. Marianne was restocking products in the hygiene section, moving slowly and carefully like someone carrying 6 months of pregnancy. Raphael pretended to look for something on nearby shelves, observing her discreetly. She wore flat shoes and an apron that couldn't completely disguise her belly. Her face looked thinner, her eyes deep with fatigue. He approached slowly, like someone approaching a wounded animal. "Marianne." She turned, startled. For a second, she dropped her guard, and he saw a flicker of the woman he had known. Surprise, tiredness, perhaps even a little relief to see him again, but soon the professional mask returned. "Do you need anything, sir?" "I'm checking if you're okay." His voice came out hoarser than he intended. "I'm working. If you're not buying anything, please don't disturb me." Raphael looked around and picked up the first product he saw, baby shampoo. "I'll take this." She sighed and accompanied him to a checkout. As she scanned the product, he asked, "Are you okay? I mean, really okay?" Marianne stared at him for a few seconds. There was so much to say, so many open wounds, so much accumulated resentment, but she was too tired to argue. "I'm surviving. That's what matters. Can I take you home after work? You shouldn't be straining yourself, carrying heavy things." "I've been managing on my own for 2 years, Raphael. I don't need you to show up now wanting to be a savior." Her coldness was a defense, and he knew. He knew Marianne too well not to realize that beneath the armor there was pain, exhaustion, and a loneliness that mirrored his own. "I don't want to be a savior. Just let me help you, please." She hesitated. Her belly was heavy, her legs ached, and the bus ride to her home was a daily torture. But accepting his help meant opening a door she had locked away. A ride. Just that. "And don't think this changes anything between us." At 6 in the evening, Raphael waited for her in the supermarket parking lot. Marianne came out the back, tired after 10 hours of work. She got into the car without looking at him, only murmuring the address, a street in Brixton, South London. During the hour-long journey in Saturday afternoon traffic, they barely spoke. Raphael tried a few times. "How are you feeling?" "Fine. When is it due?" March. Is it a girl? He wanted to ask about the baby's father, about how she ended up working in a supermarket, about everything that had happened in the last 2 years, but something in the tense way she looked out the window stopped him. When they arrived at the address, Raphael felt his heart tighten. It was a simple house on a narrow street with a small sign, "Rooms for Rent." Marianne lived in a rented room. The woman who had once shared a duplex apartment with him in one of London's most sought-after areas now lived in a small rented room at the back of a house in the outskirts. "Thanks for the ride." She opened the door to get out. "Marianne, wait." Raphael turned off the engine. "Can we talk 5 minutes?" She looked at him with weariness. "About what, Raphael? About how you humiliated me, about how you threw me out of our home because of your sick jealousy, about how you made me lose my job because you couldn't accept that I had a life of my own, about how I was an idiot, about how I regret it every day, about how I want to try and fix things. You can't fix it, Raphael. I've rebuilt my life. I'm expecting a daughter, I have a job, a home. I don't need you coming here stirring up wounds that have already healed." But the wounds hadn't healed, he realized by the slight tremble in her voice, by the way she avoided looking at him directly, by the tears she held back with all her strength. "Let me at least help you until the baby is born. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. Just let me take care of you as I should have before." Marianne remained silent for long seconds. The offer was tempting. She was exhausted, alone, afraid of childbirth, worried about money. But accepting Raphael's help meant exposing herself again to the pain she had fought so hard to overcome. "I'll think about it." That was all she managed to say before getting out of the car and disappearing into the back of the house. Raphael stood there for a few minutes, observing the busy street, the children playing on the sidewalk, the simple, real life happening far from the skyscrapers and luxury apartments. Marianne had chosen to rebuild her life there, away from him, away from everything that reminded her of what they had lived together. He drove back home with a growing certainty in his chest. He wasn't going to give up, not this time. He was going to prove to her and to himself that he was capable of being the man she deserved, even if it cost him his pride, his comfort zone, and everything he had deemed important until then. For the next 3 days, Raphael returned to the supermarket religiously, not to bother her or force conversations, but just to make sure she was okay. He bought things he didn't need, cleaning products, fruits, vitamins. He watched her from afar, noticing how she leaned on the counter when she thought no one was looking, how she rubbed her back with an expression of pain. On the 4th time, he brought a packed lunch. Nothing elaborate. Rice, beans, grilled chicken, vegetables. Real, healthy food for a pregnant woman who probably ate poorly due to lack of time and money. "What's this?" Marianne asked when he placed the lunchbox on the counter where she was organizing products. "Lunch you need to eat properly." "I do eat properly." "Crisps and soda from the cafeteria aren't eating properly." "Marianne." She stared at him with irritation, but he noticed it was more irritation with herself for him being right than genuine anger. "I don't need you to treat me like a child. I'm not treating you like a child. I'm treating you like a pregnant woman who's working herself to death and forgetting to take care of herself." Marianne sighed and took the lunchbox. She didn't say thank you, but she didn't return it either. The following week, Raphael had established a silent routine. He brought lunch every day, offered rides when she accepted, and bought vitamins that she pretended not to notice he paid for at the pharmacy near the supermarket. He discovered that she left at 6 in the evening and returned at 10 at night for the night shift. 2 shifts of work to pay the rent and save money for the baby's essentials. It was on a rainy Thursday that everything changed. Raphael was waiting for her to leave when he heard a muffled cry coming from the back of the supermarket. He ran and found Marianne leaning against a stack of boxes, her face contorted in pain, one hand on her belly and the other on her back. "What's happening?" He approached quickly. "Back pain, very strong. I think I strained myself too much carrying these boxes." Raphael didn't think twice. He picked her up, ignoring her protests, and carried her straight to the car. At St. Thomas Hospital, she was seen quickly. It was nothing serious, just muscle strain common in pregnancy, but the doctor was clear. She needed rest, fewer working hours, and stricter prenatal care. "I can't work less," she told the doctor. "I need the money." Madam, if you continue at this pace, you could have serious complications, premature birth, blood pressure problems. Raphael listened in silence, sitting on a chair beside the bed. When they left the hospital, it was already late night. "I'll take you home," he said. "Thanks for the help, but I'll manage." "Marianne, stop it. You almost fainted today. The doctor said you need rest. How are you going to get rest living in one room and working 12 hours a day?" She remained silent throughout the drive to her house. When they arrived, instead of getting out of the car immediately, she stayed still, looking at her own hands. "The baby's father," she began, and Raphael felt his heart clench. "He was a teacher at the school where I worked after I left your house. When he found out I was pregnant, he requested a transfer to another city. He said he wasn't ready to be a father, that he didn't want responsibilities." Raphael swallowed the anger he felt. It was not the time to show jealousy or judgment. "And you've been facing everything alone since then." "I lost my job at the school in my 5th month of pregnancy, constant nausea, some absences, and they used it as an excuse not to renew my contract. Since then, I've been working at the supermarket." Her voice was controlled, but Raphael noticed the effort she made not to cry. "Marianne, let me help you. Truly. Come stay at my place until the baby is born. Then you can decide what you want to do." "I can't do that, Raphael." "Why?" "Because—" She finally looked at him, and he saw tears streaming down her face. "Because I still love you, you idiot. And if I move into your house, I'll end up deluding myself again. I'll end up believing that you've changed, that this time it will work out, and when you get tired of playing family, I'll have to rebuild my life for the 3rd time. And I don't know if I have the strength for that." The confession dropped between them like a bomb. Raphael was paralyzed, processing her words. Marianne still loved him. After everything he had done, all the pain he had caused, she still loved him. "I've changed, Murray." He used the affectionate nickname for the first time in 2 years. "These 2 years away from you taught me what truly matters. They taught me that pride warms no one, that money doesn't bring back those you lose through stupidity." "How can you be sure? How can I be sure?" "Because I spent 2 years being miserable. Because every night, when I came home to that empty apartment, I remembered you reading on the sofa, you singing in the shower, you arguing with me about eating salad. Because I sought therapy, Murray. I went to therapy to understand why I destroyed the only good thing in my life." She looked at him with surprise. Raphael going to therapy was unthinkable 2 years ago. "I discovered I have abandonment issues, that my father taught me to control people instead of loving them, that I confuse love with possession. I learned to recognize when I'm being irrational, to apologize when I'm wrong, not to run away from conflicts." Marianne listened in silence, still crying. "And I know that proof isn't given with words, it's given with actions. That's why I'm here every day. That's why I cancelled trips, changed priorities. That's why I want to take care of you and your daughter without expecting anything in return." "Our daughter," she murmured. "If you stay, she will be our daughter." Raphael felt such intense emotion that he had to hold back his tears. "I want to stay, Mari. I want to stay forever this time." She remained silent for long minutes, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "If I accept, there are rules. Separate rooms. No pressure to rekindle the romance. You help me until the baby is born, and then we reevaluate everything. I agree with everything. And if at any point I feel that you're reverting to the controlling, jealous Raphael of before, I'll leave, and you won't look for me again. Never again, I agree." A week later, Marianne was settled in the guest room of his apartment. Raphael transformed the old office into a nursery, painting the walls pale yellow and assembling each piece of furniture with the care of someone creating a work of art. He bought books on pregnancy, took an online course on newborn care, and learned to make healthy purees and smoothies. The first few days were strange. They lived like polite strangers, sharing common spaces but maintaining emotional distance. Raphael cooked. She thanked him formally. He offered back massages. She politely refused. They watched television in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. But gradually, living together became more natural. Marianne began to offer suggestions for the baby's room. Raphael started telling funny stories from work again during dinner. She laughed at his first joke after 2 years, a restrained but genuine laugh. One night, when she was having difficulty sleeping because of the baby's position, Raphael offered chamomile tea and stayed up talking with her in the kitchen. They talked about names for the girl, about the future, about fears they both had. "I'm afraid I won't be a good father," he confessed. "My father was absent, controlling. I don't want to repeat the same mistakes." "You're going to be a great father," she said. "You already are." It was the first time she had shown confidence in him since they had started living together again. In her 8th month of pregnancy, Marianne had an anxiety attack in the middle of the night. She woke up crying, short of breath, terrified of the approaching birth. Raphael heard her crying, knocked on the door, and entered when she allowed it. He found her sitting on the bed, sobbing, "I'm scared, Raphael. What if something goes wrong? What if I don't know how to take care of her? What if—" He sat on the bed beside her and, without thinking, hugged her. Marianne didn't resist. She rested her head on his shoulder and cried all the tears she had held back during months of solitary pregnancy. "Everything will be fine, Marie. I'll be with you. We'll take care of her together. Do you promise you won't disappear? That when she cries in the middle of the night, when she has a fever, when I'm desperate, you'll be here?" "I promise. I promise I won't go anywhere." That night, for the first time in 2 years, Marianne slept in Raphael's arms, not out of romance, but out of a pure need not to be alone at the most vulnerable moment of her life. Isabella was born on a March morning, after 16 hours of labor. Raphael was present the entire time, holding Marianne's hand, wiping her sweat, whispering words of encouragement. When the doctor placed the baby in Marianne's arms, they both cried without caring who was watching. "She's perfect," Raphael murmured, delicately touching the baby's tiny hand. "Want to hold her?" When he held Isabella in his arms for the first time, Raphael felt reborn with her. All the love he had kept for Marianne for 2 years multiplied, expanding to include this child who was not biologically his but whom he already loved as if she were. The first few months with Isabella were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, diapers, bottles, crying, and discoveries. Raphael and Marianne took turns with the care, creating a silent and efficient partnership. He proved to be a dedicated father, waking up in the middle of the night to change diapers, singing to stop the baby from crying, carrying her in a baby carrier for hours so Marianne could rest. It was on a Sunday afternoon, when Isabella was 4 months old, that everything definitively changed. Raphael was bathing the baby, concentrating on not letting the soap run into her eyes, when he heard Marianne's laughter behind him. "What is it?" "Nothing, it's just that you're singing 'I threw the stick at the cat,' completely off-key, and she's loving it." Raphael looked at Isabella, who indeed seemed mesmerized by his terrible voice, and started laughing too. "I always sang badly. You used to complain about it. Before, I didn't know how beautiful it was to see you taking care of a child." They looked at each other for a few seconds, and Raphael saw something different in her eyes. No longer the distrust of recent months, but something that resembled the love that existed between them before everything fell apart. "Marie." "Kiss her on the forehead so she stops splashing water," she interrupted, but didn't leave the bathroom. After they put Isabella to sleep, they sat on the sofa as they had done so many times in the past. But this time, Marianne rested her head on his shoulder spontaneously. "You kept your promise," she said softly. "Which promise?" "To stay, to be here when I needed you, to take care of both of us." Raphael kissed the top of her head, inhaling the familiar scent of her shampoo. "And I'll keep fulfilling it, forever, if you let me." "Raphael?" "I forgive you, and I love you still." "I love you too, Marie. More than before. Better than before." 2 years later, Raphael and Marianne married in a simple ceremony, with only close family and a few friends. Isabella, then 2 years old, was the flower girl, scattering rose petals along her parents' path. In his wedding speech, Raphael thanked life for giving him a second chance, and Marianne for having the courage to accept a new beginning. "You taught me that love isn't possession, it's presence. That family isn't about blood, it's about choice. That forgiveness isn't forgetting, It's the conscious decision to build something new on the rubble of what was destroyed. Marianne was pregnant again, this time with a boy they planned together, who would be born into a stable and loving home. Isabella would gain a little brother and grow up knowing that, sometimes, the best love stories are those that need to be rebuilt brick by brick, with patience, humility, and the courage to admit one's own mistakes. On their honeymoon in Brighton, while Isabella played on the beach sand, Raphael and Marianne walked hand in hand, watching the sunset. "You know what's funny," she said. "If someone had told me this story 2 years ago, I would have said it was impossible." "What?" "That we would be together again. That you would turn into this man. That I would be able to trust you again. That we would form a real family." Raphael stopped and pulled her close, placing his hands on her still small belly where their second child was growing. "Sometimes life forces us to break so it can put us back together properly. Maybe we needed to go through all of that to get here. Do you think it will work out this time? Forever?" "I know it will work out, because this time we know what we have to lose, and we will never forget that again." And as Isabella built sandcastles and the sun set on the horizon, Raphael and Marianne knew they had built something far more solid than castles. They had built a deserved second chance, a love matured by pain and strengthened by the certainty that, this time, it was forever.